Usually in psychotherapy, like especially when you go through a long psychoanalysis, that's it's not like you heal a disease or something. It's more like a process in which you relearn to relate. So at the core of the therapeutic approach, at least in psychoanalysis, is this. That, let's say when you were born and you grow up, you are raised in a family. Maybe things don't go right always, and then in the therapeutic relationship you have the opportunity to relearn to relate.
To understand.
Yes, in connection with that mirror in front of you, who is the therapist. So in this sense, it is a therapy, but not in the sense that you cure a disease, because that can have many meaning. So Touch Me Not, in that sense, can be called a therapeutic process or a therapeutic relationship. The film more like the emotional drive that started this research, because this film is more a research than like a story, or it's a research that I do together with a group of people. So I started from the premise that I mentioned already in the film, that when I was 20 I thought I knew everything about intimacy. Now I realize I don't know anything, so let's go and discover. So in the process I am also part of the process, but the focus is not necessarily on me. I'm more like the frame, or me and the camera is more like the frame through which to read the whole experience. So especially the prologue and the epilogue said this, like, what are you looking at? What's the motivation for that? And my position there is more like, I said it several times, it's like I'm a child, stepping out into the world and being very curious about people, about how they experience intimacy. And so if you want, maybe like in relationship to these people and with Laura, for example, it can happen a sort of a therapeutic experience, in the sense that in relation with these people I understand things about myself, I grow, I open my mind, and it is therapeutic.
I have a question about the assumption, because when I watch the movie it gives me the impression that you are somehow critical of the way that, for example, Freud discussed about sexuality and emphasizes that society puts on, for example, sexuality. Even, for example, when Freud talks about mother and how childhood, everything can be shaped by sexuality, it creates kind of religion about sex. And the movie somehow wants to say that sex is not everything that we need to be afraid of. The sense of the guilt that we are attributed to the sex needs to be questioned. But when, in some cases, it seems to me that you also approve, for example, when you say that the way that you have been loved impact the way that you want to love the other. So it seems to me that you are bringing back all the Freudian questions of the relationship between child and mother. So I'm just curious, because I didn't understand well, when is your position in relationship to the psychoanalysis, and how the sex and its impact has been discussed or theorized in contemporary society?
Yeah, well, the film is not, it's not a book on psychology or something. Okay. It's just and Freud is not the only one that looked at this connection between the way you were brought up and the way you were raised in a certain family and your further relationship. I mean, this is a fact that it's basically explored in most of psychology approaches. So what was maybe had a more impact in this research, it's another book made by Michael Bader called Arousal, and he's not the only one which is exploring the fact that our sexual behavior, it's like a key to read deeper aspects of the self. So that if you look at, for example, of an SM relationship, it's a power dynamic there, but if you experience that as a person and you have these drives, if you look at that first of all, you might judge yourself. Something is wrong with me. Something I'm sick or I am deranged. But if you look with honesty to what that means, and why do you need to be basically controlled by someone? Why do you need to give up responsibility? Why giving up responsibility gives you the safety to go into a sexual relationship, because otherwise you cannot. So if you look at all this stuff and you just dig down, you might realize things about yourselves that are not necessarily connected to sexuality, but to other blockages from the past. Like, there can be many explanations. So looking into our sexual behaviors, it's a mirror into ourselves. And I think if you look at that, you start to understand yourself better, not to judge yourself so much. And implicitly, you don't judge the others so much. Shani, our colleague, have you been to the press conference yesterday? No. So we have a character in the film which is dealing precisely with that. It's called Shani Love. It's a sex therapist. It's a mix of escort and psychotherapist, if you want. Is the one who deals with Laura's anger, like exploring her borders and anger issues. And so this guy also has the same approach. Like, he's looking into your, sexual fantasies, preferences, needs, and tries to understand what is behind that. Why is that, and how can you be helped in this process to free yourself from these blockages and get rid of some of these problems. But I don't look at, and none of them I think look at it as a disease, but it looks as a sort of an imbalance that you are confronted with at a certain point, then that you can regulate, that you can bring back into balance. The article is precisely about this topic, because you mentioned Freud, but you will see there are a lot of thinkers nowadays about sexuality and about intimacy who go very interesting directions, different than the Freud one, which was a bit limiting, because he was just explaining everything through that. That's not the point.
No, because I'm studying a lot on these topics, and when I mention Freud, because he seems like a father.
He's the
And
initiator.
many of our ideas contemporarily shaped by him, but has been changed a lot. But just I bring this as an example.
Yeah. And you have this article called "Conscious King Saves the World." Like, you have these views of Shanilov. He has very progressive views on the importance to live to accept ourselves in all aspects, including sexuality, and to explore that and to face our shadows and how that impacts society. Because if you don't judge yourself as that you are a monster or something, or deranged, and you look inside and you accept that and you work with that, like a form of self-development, then also in relationship to the other people you are going to have another perspective. And then at the level of society, especially in the context of today with the rise of the right wing, and you will have a different relation to the other and to the otherness, to being different, basically. To really confront your discomfort zone. So it took time. It was a long process. I think it was like a 2 years research. I wouldn't call it casting, because it's not like fictional work.
These are real people.
Cast people. You just look for like-minded people that would like to come with you in a journey, in a research. And the process was after we found them, which took a long time. Then the process of working with them started. So we worked with video diaries a long time. Basically, it was not just a single period of shooting. It was more like how you do it in documentary. It was research where you film, then you have an official shooting period, then you go editing, then you go back to shooting. And meanwhile, we had these procedures which mix fiction and reality. Like, they received cameras themselves, and we would do diaries. So I give them some homework about intimacy that they do with their own material, and they would send me those. And then we have Skypes to comment on that. The Skypes are also recorded, and then they go to new homework. So it was a process in which they befriended the team and the camera. In 2013, the first exchanges, the first official shoot in 2015, the second one 2016. In between we continued.
A lot of critics who came out of the theater talks about, for example, the fact that you put into question the beauty. Sex and beauty are very totally intertwined together, and you use the actors or actresses that are not usually considered as a beautiful object in the cinema. You bring another gaze into the cinema and put into the question maybe male gaze. But I'm just curious because I think that beauty is a source of wonder. When you see somebody as a beautiful face, he's not something normal. Even when you bring some things like, for example, disabled or the other guys, there is sort of wonder around them because they are not the usual guys. They have some kind of beauty. So my question is about that. Don't you feel that you didn't use you still are under the frame of using abnormality, because beauty as defined by society as beautiful and the beauty that you bring is both somehow kind of beauty.
Yes, that's an interesting topic which the film deals with, definitely. I mean, how do you find Christian?
It's a source of wonder. It's something that you want to watch because it's not something that you can find in the street. You can not find
unique face.
It's unique face. Yeah. It's face, and beauty
also,
is all about face.
It's also a process that we learn and we
get to know him.
Yeah.
Of course, yes.
So he becomes basically, let's say, more and more beautiful when you know him. So it's very much. So this is very interesting, what is beauty and where it comes from, and the film it's definitely works with that, and we work with the film. It's also about the body, and body is different than the norm. It's really like the film. It's working in that area of non-normative. In many respects, and I do feel this is very subjective. I think the beauty is very subjective anyway, the perception of beauty. I think those people are very beautiful, so I don't know how the other people are going to experience their presence, but for me they are not only beautiful but fascinating from so many points of view. So yes, I'm questioning that because we've been educated that beauty is in a certain way, intimacy it's in a certain way, sexuality should function in a certain way. So basically the film is questioning all that. It's just questioning. It's not saying that one is better than other or giving any solution or definition or something. It's just questioning and opening new perspectives on these aspects.
Because it's not,
we
not
refuse
even,
we refuse the label with all our force. No, this is not a documentary. It's a mix, it's a hybrid, it's a mix between fiction and reality. Fiction, it's more like, it's very clear, the fictional element and the fictional structure, but it's just, its main purpose is to be a safety net where we can work with authentic stuff and with the reality of the encounters between people. So in a way it is connected, yes. It's true that I am not interested in fiction just per se. I'm interested in fiction just as a tool to be able to work with and investigate real, authentic things. You can see it in the press conference. It was the DOP of the film. And he had the opportunity to speak a bit about this tough challenge we had, that basically for us it's very important, the visual style, so we had to structure everything very carefully to create this space. It's the same thing, is the tension between fiction and reality. So you create a structure, fictional, you create some rules of the game, a space, a way to lens it, but then within that space you don't know what's going to happen, because you have reality working by its own rules. So for him it was also very difficult, because he wanted to have in a certain way, and we wanted to have very precise mise en scène, but because we are not able to predict the free movements of the characters, we had to adjust very often. But what's fascinating is that once that real thing in front of us was happening, it didn't matter the theme. I even kept this moment when Shani is in a deep emotional moment with Laura, and you have the DOP just changing the angle. It's passing by, and they don't bother. It was at one point, the camera was just naturally part of the whole process, and they were just going through their experiences within. So it was a tension, as he said, a tension between order and anarchy, order and freedom in the visual style. The script in the beginning, but that was more like a structure to start to work with. So you had this journey of self-discovery of a woman, which meets several escorts, but we didn't know the escorts. So we discovered these people, and we brought them with their universes in the film, which informed, everything is changed basically based on, we had this workshop for people with disabilities and Thomas having a difficulty with that, so as a starting point it was there. But for example, the workshop was created, adjusted based on a real workshop. So you create this, you bring the participants after a casting, the participants that you feel are right, that they have the sensitivity, that they have the ability to express themselves. So you bring all these people in this workshop, which exists in reality, because it was not like that, because we adjusted it for the film a bit, but it exists as a principle. And you bring Thomas and Christian. So I can only have a plan of what's going to happen, but I don't know what's going to happen. So, and then I'm there to witness something real that happens between them.
One of the interesting themes in the film is that there is a relationship between sex and otherness. It's not only by isolating yourself and protecting your body that you could discover who you are. It is by relating your body to the other.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'm very interested if you have say more about this aspect, because in the current society especially, we think a lot about how to protect our body and not to interfere. But you discussed the fact that sex has a ritual quality in it, and this ritual quality could only function in relationship with the other.
You mean the therapeutic quality that I talked earlier?
No, the fact that you need to be open to accept your intimacy to be somehow put into question or challenge.
Yeah. So basically, I think I know what you mean.
Uh-huh.
I think so. I'm gonna try to answer. I think you are talking about, and I think you are talking about what we started with in the beginning when you were asking me about Freud.
Yeah.
Like what happens in this film with these people is that they transform in relation, not just by themselves.
No.
So in relation via these transformative encounters with the other, they start to free themselves, to understand the blockages and to free themselves. So for example, for Laura, the meeting with Hannah, it's very important in terms of her relationship with her own body. Hannah has such a she has a mythology of her own body, and she has names for her breasts. It's a very specific relationship that she has with the body, which is completely different than the norm. This kind of relationship for Laura is transformative. It's not like in a regular, fiction film. It's on a subtle, I think, on a more subtle level, because you hear Laura reflecting on it, but you don't see that operating immediately. You feel it along the film, how that transformative change operates. So in that sense, that has an impact. The relationship to the other body has an impact on her. With Shani is the same. There it's very obvious the work he does on her breaks some blockages and takes the anger out. And Laura and Christian with Tudor, it was this absolutely amazing process, which is fully authentic. That in the first day of the workshop, Christian read everybody very well, but in particular Tudor. He said, you have this wall. I don't know what is there, I don't want to offend you or something, but I feel there is this wall. And this whole metaphor of the wall went through the film to breaking the wall, because this film is basically about inner liberation. It's you break your inner walls, and the whole scene with Laura in the end, it's a sort of an apotheosis of this inner liberation. So with Thomas, what happened is that, so he felt the rejection towards Christian based on an exterior judgment of the other person. He judged himself for it. He felt guilty for that. He felt completely shitty that he is such a lousy human being that has this huge repulsion. So he was in this struggle with himself. What happens is that Christian says, it's okay. So he accepts all these negative so-called emotions that Thomas judged himself for. And only by the fact that he accepted him and he said there's no good or bad, I mean it's okay to have an emotion, live that emotion. It's exactly like in a therapeutic process. So Thomas relaxes, feels accepted, starts to accept that he has these feelings, and then they start to get close to each other. So Christian starts to ask about his personal history. So Thomas is able already to open up gradually and to look at Christian with his perspective on Christian changes. And basically he reaches a point, it's very frustrating because I know I have the whole process. We have all the process, a lot of material which we didn't manage to put in the film. But Thomas, also by looking at Christian's way of relating to greed, to the way he experiences intimacy, he is changing a lot along the film. And at one point he even goes into that really deep thing about his mother, which for him was very difficult. It's like in therapy, you relearn to relate. Christian, it's like the perfect mirror for Thomas, and it's giving back, it's okay what you feel, is validating his emotion, it's seeing him. Okay, I understand it's difficult to be different, I was different, so they bond about being different, and then Thomas gets the freedom to express this whole thing about the mother. And then, at the end of this whole journey, which is quite amazing and it's frustrating to have so little in the film, he has this breakthrough in the end when he says that I thought this wall is protecting me from outside, but actually I am afraid to go out there. I'm afraid because he's afraid of being rejected, hurt, judged, and so things are changing in relation to others, because I guess that's what you asked me in the first place. So the last question, it's a radiography of a relationship, like also over an extended period of time. It's called The Death and the Maiden, provisory. We don't know if it's going to be like that, but it's a power couple. We explore a couple a long time, also with these methods, and because it's over a long period of time, you have also the impact of time on the relationship and of subjective memory it's working with time and the subjectivity of memory about the relationship. So it's coming gradually, but first we need a big sleep after Berlinale. Then we finish the sound for this.
Already finishing the sound?
We still need to work a bit on the sound and to do the last masters. We need to finish this one.
Hopefully
technically.
Coming April or May will be ready?
I think somewhere around June. The technical stuff is going to be ready.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.